Day two, the horror. I mean, we survived day one. We survived several parties, especially parties that had free drinks and free food. I think the food was more dangerous than the drinks. I was able to control the drinks. The food was getting out of hand. I mean, you can only eat so many deep fried Scotch eggs out of a barrel or something like that. But welcome to Black Hat 2025 Day 2. We are here. We're recording live from the Cyber Risk TV studio at beautiful Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. I'm not telling you which floor. I've said that a bunch of times, but I said it again. I'm your host, Doug White, and joining me for this interview is Ted Shorter, the CTO and co-founder of Keyfactor. Hi, Ted.
Hello, good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on board.
Yeah.
I was actually excited to see this interview, and we kind of get to pick who we interview with, unless people are like, under no circumstances will I talk to him ever again. We've had a few of those, but typically, I'm like, and this was a topic about quantum, which I'm very both intrigued by and terrified of, because quantum's cool. It's weird.
Yes.
So, and when you take cool and weird and terrifying, it starts to go, okay, I'm in. So I did want to talk to you a little bit about that, because I know quantum computing's coming. Mm-hmm. And obviously it's going to be a sea change for people when this happens. So could you maybe give us just a little bit of background about where is that going? Like where, whatever you want to talk about on that.
Yeah, I mean, in general, quantum computing is about exploiting the particularly weird properties of quantum mechanics and quantum physics, which admittedly make no sense whatsoever. To the point that Einstein even rejected most of the quantum mathematics because it didn't make any sense to him either. But it turns out it actually is true. It keeps getting verified by experiment after experiment. But basically, quantum computing is about using those properties to perform computations. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that while it is not that effective at some computations, it is extremely effective at others,
like crypto,
and so it bodes a lot of promise for a lot of things. There's a lot of tremendous advances that will come from sufficiently strong quantum computers. However, one of the downsides is that the RSA and ECC algorithms, which basically underpin the internet and pretty much all digital life as we know it, are one of the things that quantum computers are particularly good at breaking if they are sufficiently strong. Yes. So if that happened today, that would be absolutely catastrophic.
Yeah. So I mean, that would imply that we're not ready for this. I mean, I know that NIST and people have been putting out, both contests for development of new algorithms and so on, and there have been some new algorithms developed. Where are we right now? So let's do that first.
Yeah, so NIST has standardized 3 algorithms so far to replace RSA and ECC. There is a 4th that is coming, should be hopefully by the end of this year. And there are more standards actually in the works. So NIST, as you mentioned, runs these kind of challenge processes to standardize new algorithms. That's how we got AES. It's how we got SHA-2, SHA-3, and so it's a standard process that they do. But they've started, they've put set 2030 as kind of the deadline for deprecation for RSA and ECC. Many other government organizations for other governments around the world have started also putting out their guidance for transitioning away from RSA and ECC onto these new algorithms. Canada, the EU, Australia, and several others. And so that's kind of the line in the sand of, hey, we need to get moving off of these by 2030.
I was really happy to see that, though, because all too often it seems like we're sort of responding to catastrophe, and it was almost like I was expecting when I first started reading about quantum, because this was quite a while ago, like 10 years ago, I was reading about quantum and I was like, well, we're going to deny this exists until, it happens. And somebody goes, no, we have a Chinese quantum computer online and everything's been, cracked in like 15 seconds. So that's pretty terrifying. So you guys at Keyfactor went out and you bought InfoSec Global, which is a crypto discovery and asset management company, and Cipher Insights, which is a lightweight network sensor company. Is this, tell me where that goes. I mean, why did you buy those things?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's all about starting that quantum transition journey. If you're going to migrate from these algorithms to the new ones, you can't migrate what you don't know you have. And so both of these technologies are about getting a very deep understanding of what you have, what's being used, and where. Cipher Insights is particularly good at actually watching your network and letting you know what's actually happening on the wire, and in addition to what systems are actually communicating to each other, right? So in the future, being able to say, I want to put a new algorithm on this web server, but in order to do that, you need to know what systems that might break as far as compatibility and so forth, right? Because support for these algorithms from the vendor community is not uniform. And so you need to know, what's going to break.
Because there's going to be a lot of breakage. I mean, anytime you change something as fundamental as this underlying, and I don't mean changing it a little bit, but I mean, just when people were trying to change, like SHA algorithms, it caused all kinds of chaos. And I had clients who were saying, we can't, we were recommending things, and they're going, yeah, but we can't do that. Because if we do it, the other end doesn't work. Because
to that end, actually, and that's when you said you were happy to see that 2030. I was both happy to see guidance, but also scared, knowing that I think most organizations, like if you haven't started at least planning for a quantum transition now, you're already too late, right? And we saw from SHA-1 to SHA-2 how long that took. For most organizations, between the time that SHA-2 became a standard and the time most organizations were able to get off of SHA-1 was, a decade.
Is this? I mean, I think this is probably then just going to start creating little bubbles in like OT and things like that, operational technology kind of stuff, because that's usually the laggard of all laggards. When people come in and say, well, we bought this robotic sawmill in 1981,
and it runs Windows XP,
and it was designed to last 100 years, and we can't afford to replace the robotic sawmill, and it doesn't use any cryptography at all. And so you just end up having to say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to build a big wall, and we're going to put the robotic sawmill behind the big wall, and that was all fine until people started going, yeah, but we want to plug that into the internet so the controller can actually live in Indianapolis and work on the sawmill in Pennsylvania.
Same thing will happen here. Stamping machines, things in hospitals, handheld scanners. But I think that's the other part with the InfoSec Global pieces. They're all about going deep on the endpoints themselves. And what's interesting is, we started looking at this from a quantum perspective. What we realized is once you start shining a light on cryptographic use within organizations, there's actually a whole lot of mess now. There is. Even before quantum. And InfoSec Global does a tremendous job of going extremely deep on cryptographic libraries, keys and certificates embedded inside of binaries, finding things basically that almost no one else is able to find, being able to pull all that together into the things that Keyfactor is already doing as far as certificate issuance, certificate automation, building that transition from the beginnings of discovering what you need to migrate all the way through that, being able to complete that migration and then monitor your progress.
This is I mean, I hadn't really thought about this before because plenty of time I've asked clients about like, can you tell me a map of what all you have? But when I'm asking this question, it's not about crypto.
Right.
It's about like, do you know where your servers are?
Yep.
Do you know where your network infrastructure stuff is? And I've never really thought about this deeper question about like, do you know where your crypto is and what it is?
And most people haven't. I think that's the thing. It's one of those things. I have been in cyber my entire career, and even in things like PKI, things that use cryptography on a daily basis. But that's the one piece. Security is always about the weakest link. I think cryptography is one of those things that we've all sort of taken for granted, and now we can't.
It's a pretty hidden layer kind of thing, though. I think because it is a seamless thing in a lot of cases where I buy a device, I plug it in, it's communicating with some other control board, and especially in OT and stuff like that. And you ask the people that built it, how does this work? And they're like, I don't know. You just plug this wire to that wire, and everything works. And you don't unplug the wire. You're fine. But in reality, there's a lot of layers in that communication stack that may be going between those two places that could involve crypto, and suddenly could be a problem.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it is really literally anything that communicates on a network is going to need to change.
Yeah.
And so that means every vendor that makes anything that communicates, every TLS stack in the world is going to have to get swapped out.
I feel like I shouldn't be here. I need to go.
It's a massive change.
I think I might need to. Yeah, I think I got a couple of things I need to look into.
The good news is there are vendors that are starting. AWS has launched support for some of the quantum algorithms. There was a report that Kubernetes now has support for some of the new algorithms, and so like that transition is happening.
Yeah.
And that is one of the things that people can be doing now is just start talking to your vendors. Right. You can't move until your vendors have support for these things. Going back to your example of these old outdated systems, but like you need to understand where your vendor supply chain is.
The robotic sawmill, that's one of my favorite. I actually saw that once. I was like, this is the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Robotic sawmill that now is compromised because it uses outdated.
I mean, I think this robotic sawmill used like a button that said on and a button that said off. So it was like the end. The crypto was not there. It was just like you push that, then you turn it on. We were just reviewing, and I'm like, is this a threat? And the guy's like, someday. It's only a threat if you go in there. And I'm like, I don't want to go in there. Like, I don't know what's going on, but there was a lot of stuff. And they just sort of these logs came down this belt and went in this gate, and then like bad things happen. And one of the terms that you brought up was called full crypto visibility. It was a term, and I wanted you to tell me maybe a little more about what that means, because initially when I read that, I said, "Oh, this is like open sourcing the crypto," which was this old issue, but I don't think that's maybe what you're talking about now. I was thinking about the Clipper chip. You remember this story, and the government wants to put a back door in it, and then nobody would use it because they're like, well, I don't want something with a back door built into it, and that's just stupid. And I was thinking, okay, so the open source idea of my crypto algorithms, I do think that's a good idea. I mean, the algorithm should be strong enough that it can withstand somebody knowing how the algorithm works. But I think you're talking about understanding this organizationally. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, we're obviously big fans of open source as well. Keyfactor is actually the caretakers of the open source Bouncy Castle encryption library. So we're actually on the front lines of implementing all these new standards and making sure that they're all correct and get built into a whole lot of other products and so forth. Many of whom are exhibiting here at the show. But no, for us, it's about understanding. You need to understand where your cryptography is, where it's being used, how it's being used, and when you get to things like quantum, the cryptographic capabilities of machines. So, like, is this thing quantum ready or not? Right? When can I move and switch over algorithms? Because we saw that with SHA-1 to SHA-2. Is people had to wait until the very last piece of their environment got updated to support SHA-2 before they could move. That took way too long. We don't have that much time this time. So just be able to understand, like, okay, what else do I need to work on? What else do I need to patch? What else needs to be updated? Where do I have to apply, the sort of encapsulation techniques like you described? But you need to build that strategy now. And the only way to start doing that is to get a full picture of what is actually in use where in your environment.
So how do we start this process? I mean, is the initial part of the process just going to be like, okay, let's make two piles of legacy stuff that is just doomed,
right? Because
we know we're not going to fix this. The robotic sawmill, maybe it's going to work. We're going to have to mitigate. We can't. This is never going to change, and we don't have $100 million to replace this. And this other pile of things that we need to go through. Because to me, if a client asked me, that would be my first step. Is like, let's just find stuff that we can't fix. Your X-ray machine, we can't fix it, and you can't buy a new one. But if we get this other pile, this is this pile that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think you need to get that information from your vendors and let them. They need to tell you. If it's the sawmill, people say like, "Hey, we have no plans. I don't even know what."
We've been out of business for 7 years. Yeah,
exactly. Then you need to take that into account. But I think that's the first step, is understanding from your vendors what their roadmap is, and so you can build those. The current pile there's almost nothing that's quantum ready right now.
Yeah.
That's changing though. Like I mentioned, you're starting to see some things that have that support. Going to be a lot more when we get to probably Q1 or so of next year. Should see quite a bit of support. That's when the mainstream vendors, the Apples, the Microsofts, that kind of stuff will likely have support for this stuff. But you're right. There's those piles, and I think that also comes across though with a risk assessment, right? Because you also need to be focusing on the things that are the most valuable to you in terms of data, in terms of the key. What are the keys to your kingdom, and what do you need to do to protect those? So I think that's the other cross section of that is capabilities, but also combined with the things that are.
And you can mitigate. It is possible. People are very sloppy with this. It's something I say all the time: is private VLANs, and don't expose management interfaces on your network infrastructure, because why on earth would you do that?
Shouldn't do that anyway.
Do it all the time. Yeah, they do it all the time. And the other one I always said was called Dr. Fung's lab, and Dr. Fung had all this legacy equipment that was running Twinix and all kinds of wacky stuff. And Dr. Fung was not to be trifled with because he had a lot of grant money. And when people have a lot of grant money in research and academics, and you go to them and go, "We want you to fix this," and they go, "No." You go, "Oh, he's got a lot of grant money." Because, that person can tell you no, or they'll pack their bags and take their grant money somewhere else. And so you end up having to mitigate around those kind of things. What about, so you said talk to your vendors.
Sure.
100% agree. Absolutely. You should be talking, and you should be doing that right now, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you probably should already have done that. So like maybe put down the monitor. No, don't stop watching. Yeah. But you might want to leave right after
I will
this.
say we've only gotten a few questionnaires ourselves from vendors.
Yeah.
So like this is process, as far as I can tell, just starting.
That's scary.
Yeah.
What about proprietary stuff? Because so I mean, I worked in a long time ago, but it's probably still there. Like they had proprietary components of code, sometimes much code that, I mean, where do we start on that? There's no vendor to call.
If you're talking about your own stuff,
No, it was like companies that I worked for that had, a million lines of proprietary home rolled code that they wrote,
Yeah, I mean, obviously part of that too, and this is also something that InfoSec Global has capabilities around, is scanning source code repositories, right? So assuming you still have the source, if you don't, that's a different problem. But I think we can scan binaries as well. But it's like, understanding what actually is being used. If you have the source code, being able to find where that is, there's a lot of work now being done around sort of agility toolkits where you can sort of start to separate the task of performing the encryption. So developers just say encrypt, decrypt, sign, verify, and let the algorithm and choice and so forth happen at a different layer. Those are things. But I think this is one of those cases where there's no one solution here. There's a lot of tools that can be brought to bear on this. And it starts with having this assessment of what you have, planning out what your strategy is going to be. And then for each of those things, whether it's cryptographic keys, you need to be talking with your HSM vendors because they all have different roadmaps as far as quantum support or not, based on which type of hardware you're using. And so just getting all that laid out, reference that again with the things that are most important to you, and then figure out the plan of how you're going to move stuff.
So you need a quantum plan. I know I tell you need these plans, although you need a response plan, you need this plan, you need that plan, but guess what? You need a quantum plan too, and you better start on it now, because even though 2030 sounds a long way away, it's literally not.
Overnight.
In fact, 2030 is less time than since the last time I came to Black Hat. So that's pretty terrifying. So thank you, Ted Shorter, for joining us today. If you want to find out more about Keyfactor, please visit securityweekly.com/KeyfactorBH. For all the other Black Hat 2025 coverage by Cyber Risk Alliance, please visit securityweekly.com/Black Hat. Thanks again to Ted for coming here. You stick around because we'll be back right after the break with a whole bunch more interviews from Black Hat 2025.